The American Midwest is often referred to as flyover country, an area of the United States without oceans or mountains, without a good reason to visit. Where I stand now, it takes 22 minutes for airliners leaving Chicago O'Hare, one of the world's busiest airports, to fly overhead on their way to presumably more interesting destinations. And yet, they are passing over one of the most unique, albeit little known, geologic and geographic regions in the U.S., the Driftless. Untouched by the last ice age, being devoid of glaciers left behind a part of the country covered with limestone bluffs and deep forest and running streams and blue lakes, it is unique to the flat or gently rolling farmland often associated with the American Midwest. Much of my recent research and practice has focused on the southern edge of this region, the bottom of the Driftless, looking not only at the landscape but also the socioeconomics and politics and culture of where this area begins and ends, and the personal, as both my wife and I were born and raised here. For sustainable strategies, the personal has been my focus. The photographs I created for this course are an off-ramp to what has been my primary research project, this time focusing solely on a family farmhouse and a unique, for me anyway, method in creating images, attempting to capture more time and space in a single photograph as part of the story of restoring and sustaining a 19th century homestead. As the Civil War was coming to an end, this home was being built. Within 5 years, it was owned by a family named Tabor, a name that has been on its deeds for 155 years and counting. Built of the region's limestone, it has been both a literal and metaphorical foundation for 6 generations. Thousands upon thousands of days, one after another, farming the surrounding fields, waking up on Christmas mornings nowhere but here. Grandchildren on summer breaks playing games and catching fireflies and climbing hay bales. My mother-in-law was the last person to call this home. When she died a few years ago, my wife and her siblings, none of them farmers, sold off much of the land. But what to do with the house? It was not ready for a different name to be on the mailbox across the gravel road. And so my wife and I bought the old stone farmhouse along with a few outbuildings and 8 acres of land. Room by room, we are restoring the place for weekend getaways and family retreats, a place for our own grandchildren to one day wake up on Christmas mornings and catch fireflies on summer nights. During the course of sustainable strategies, I have created a body of work that tries to give greater consideration to both the time and space of this family landmark as it is maintained for future generations. As Willem Flusser notes, images are significant surfaces. Images signify, mainly, something out there in space and time that they have to make comprehensible to us as abstractions, as reductions of the 4 dimensions of space and time to the 2 surface dimensions. If every photograph contains elements of space and time, can more of both be condensed into the parameters of a single frame? The work in this portfolio represents an attempt. Each image is an accumulation of 100 photos, taken in short succession and then layered one on top of the other at 1% opacity, to create a single frame movie in a way, sharing a minute or two out of the more than 83 million minutes this farmhouse has stood its ground. This approach certainly references repeat photography and rephotography, although done in a rapid-fire, short burst of time rather than over days or months or even years. And while this work and method is unique to me, I found myself surprised by the diverse set of influences who I may reference in some of these images. For example, work by photographers Christopher Taylor, Warrie Johnson, or Marjolaine Riley, who portray various perspectives on home in their photo books. Or Gillian Lobb and Tina Barney, whose documentary projects often center around their own families. Another influence has been conceptual artists such as Jason Salavon, who created works by layering photographs in a technical process similar to my own, and Hiroshi Sugimoto and his long exposures that capture entire movies in a single frame. Painters were also an influence, such as Gerhard Richter or Francis Bacon. Their works add a blur to their objective and figurative paintings. And finally, I feel this work is a direct contrast to the new topographics who portrayed suburban sprawl and development. My focus is on breathing new life into a long-standing home. In The Poetics of Space, Gaston Bachelard notes that a house constitutes a body of images that give mankind proofs or illusions of stability. We are constantly reimagining its reality. To distinguish all these images would be describe the soul of the house. It would mean developing a veritable psychology of the house. I feel that this work I've created in the course of Sustainable Strategies is an attempt to look at both the soul and the psychology of a long-standing home. Although this portfolio represents a detour or diversion from my research on the driftless, its subject is actually the core, and perhaps the heart and soul of what has drawn me to this project. In many ways, this subject, an old Iowa farmhouse in the middle of the driftless, is my own sustainable strategy for life.